Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera to all my fellow friends and to Sir Anwar Fahmi. My name is Nofirzana binti Muhammad Amin from MC242-3A. Me and my teammates would like to present about our Asian Politik group works, which is 2020 election flaws and issue in Myanmar. Myanmar or Burma, the Union Republic of Myanmar is a nation with more than 100 ethnic groups in Southeast Asia. The population is roughly 54 million as of in 2017. The capital city of Myanmar is Naypyidaw, and the Yangon, which is Rangoon, is the largest city in Myanmar. Since 1997, Myanmar is a member of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is ASEAN. Myanmar is a country that is rich in jade, gems, oil, natural gas, and other minerals. However, despite being a large country in an economic growth region, Myanmar is also the region's poorest country. About a quarter of their population lives in poverty, and despite being an extremely resource-rich country, Myanmar's economy is one of the world's least developed. The nation got its independence on 4 January 1948, named the Union of Burma, in which the time was chosen by an astrologer for its auspiciousness, with Sao Shwe Tai as its first president and U Nu as its first prime minister. There has been a strong feeling of resentment against British rule from the earliest days of colonization. Many Burmese saw Japan's rise as an opportunity to become independent from British, and when the war began, Burma formed the Burma Independence Army in Japan. Next, the political structure in Myanmar. Myanmar are facing political transition from military government to democracy government. In 1946, Aung San was the deputy chairman of the Burmese Executive Council before the end of 1946. He always fought and supported democracy. Feeling threatened by Aung San's presence in the political world, he was assassinated and killed by his politician rival. Moving on to the next section, which is the independence era in 1948. Myanmar has achieved its independence from Britain on 4 January 1948. Burma has become a democracy based on the parliamentary system on 4 January 1948, called the Union of Burma. Sao Shwe Tai is the first president of Union of Burma and U Nu as the prime minister. Bicameral parliament was formed, which consists of the Chamber of Deputies, which is the lower house, and the Chamber of Nationalities, which is the upper house. The function of Chamber of Deputies is to vote on the parliament and government bills, which they also get to discuss on the bills submitted. To continue today's presentation, I would like to invite Muhammad Arif to present on military socialist era.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good day I wish to my Asian Politik lecturer, Mr. Anwar Fahmi Haridas bin Abdullah, and to my fellow classmates. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Arif bin Muhammad Amir, and I'm from MC242-3A. I would like to split my presentation into 3 parts. First of all, I would like to present on the military socialist era. Next is SPDC era. And last but not least, I would like to present on the 1990 election in Burma, or better known as Myanmar. Without wasting any time, let's begin. First of all, military socialist era, 1962 to 1988. Burma's prime minister, or better known as Myanmar's prime minister, U Nu, left and gave up of his office back in 1957 after a serious split in the ruling party, the Anti-Fascist People's Freedom, or better known as ASFPF. Due to this issue, Ne Win had maintained and take care of the government and followed the 1947 constitution strictly until the third election back in 1960 as prime minister. On 1962, President of Burma, Ne Win, formed the Burma Socialist Program Party, or better known as BSPP, and became its chairman. Stated that the party was one state party that brings the Burmese way to socialism ideology. The government had established one party state, which makes the sole party of the country. The SPP controlled and held the power to almost everything, including the decision making. It was known that his military government ruled in a way of political violence, isolationism, keep the other countries distance, xenophobia, which means anti-China, totalitarianism, prohibit opposition party, and ruin the economy. The bad economy had led Burma, or better known as Myanmar, as one of the poorest and less developed countries until today. Then, in 1988, Ne Win had resigned from its position due to the extreme forces that he received from the protests made by citizens to argue the government. The people wanted democracy for Burma. Moving on to the second part of my presentation, which is I'm going to present on the State Peace and Development Council, or better known as SPDC era. In 1988, there were a protest by thousands of people to fight against the cruel military government and BSPP rule that is ruled by Ne Win. San Suu Kyi, who went to Burma to visit her sick mother, had led to the National League Democracy. Aung San Suu Kyi, the daughter of Burma independence hero Aung San, had led the revolt. The protest was known as the 4/8 uprisings to seek democratic government, which resulted in the resignation of Ne Win. However, the 4/8 uprising failed to gain democracy as Burma continued as military country because of Burma Socialist Program Party, BSPP, was replaced by the official name of military junta led by So Maung. Aung San Suu Kyi was put on house arrest and the government changed the country name from Burma to Myanmar in 1989. The regime had restrained the freedom of speech and other association. All newspaper, magazines, books were subject to severe censorship. The country had allowed almost no political freedom at all. And not only that, but they also ignored the Burma's need and did not solve the ethnic-related problem, nor trying to unify people. The military government is restricting democratic participation because there is no independent judiciary in Burma back then. Ne Win ruler had enacted a law that banned and prohibited printing of anything opposite of the state's political ideology. Okay, so let's continue to the last part of my presentation, which is I'm going to present on the 1990 election. In 1990, general election was made by the State Law and Order Restoration Council, or better known as SLORC, to elect an assembly to draft for a new constitution, and it focuses on the emergence of a new and enduring state constitution and national reconsolidation. The National League of Democracy, NLD, has won big at the election in the 1990 election by 60% of the vote and 81% of the parliament seats of 362 out of 485. It's a huge number, The big win has hinted the military dictatorship that the people do not want them to be in power anymore. The win did not result in anything because Burma's government refused to neither recognize the result nor give power. Instead, the government said that the election was not for parliament but to form an assembly to draft a new constitution. Months and months and months later, government arrests and harass many opposition politicians, which led them to resign and leave the country as refugees, while Aung San Suu Kyi remained in house arrest until the year of 2010. Alright, I think that's all from me, and I would like to invite Ms. Azian Farhan to continue today's presentation. Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to my classmates and especially to Sir Anwar. My name is Nur Azian Farhan binti Ismail. I'm from MC2423A and today I would like to present the next slides. In 2008, the United Nations wanted Aung San Suu Kyi, the leader of the National League for Democracy, to be released from the prison. To support human rights, the United Nations also urged Myanmar to move towards national reconciliations and to restore democracy. The new military government, State Law and Order Restoration Council created the 2008 Constitution. According to Tun, Aung San Suu Kyi from the National League Democratic was not allowed to be involved and participate regarding the constitution. She was also be banned from having an office. The constitution gives the military the leading political role. Other than that, the most powerful figure in the country would be the army commander-in-chief, which can appoint key minister and use power in times of emergency. In the executive branch, the power is held by the president that was elected by the parliament. President and its cabinet could only be dismissed by impeachment. Legislative branch consists of structure for the states or region, union, self-administered, zones or division, the capital territory, and others. 5 years mandate is given to all members elected and 25% seats in parliamentary owned by the military. Meanwhile, the judicial branch consists of the courts martial, ordinary courts, and the constitutional tribunal. The constitutional process does not give any major changes in power relations. It also does not hold formula to ending the military's dominance. It's used to push back the citizenry and expand power. We move on to the 2010 election. The government decided to hold a multi-party election in 2010 with a new constitution. So the election in 2010 is actually the first election after 20 years after the last election in 1919. Opposition parties, including National League for Democracy, was harassed by the military government and were accused of trying to disrupt the democratic process. Nevertheless, they still showed their intention to participate. The election result was seen as fraud when an opposition party and the Union Solidarity and Development Party, led by the retired military general Tin Shin, won the election with 883 seats out of 1,154 seats. He had become the 8th president from 2011 until 2016. He was previously a prime minister from 2017 until 2011. He had deregulation media censorship and improved relationships with countries including the US. Political prisoners were also released. Thin Shan was known as the reformist and moderate leader. Next is 2012 by-election. So what is by-election? By-election is an election made to use to fill an office that has become vacant between general elections. International observers were invited to observe the elections. The NLD won the by-elections with 43 seats. This has enabled Aung San Suu Kyi to enter the parliament and gain a leading role in legislative committees, including to revise the constitution. This has led to many Western states abandon the economic sanctions imposed, not all, but most of them.
Thank you to Mrs. Azian for giving me the floor to continue our presentation for today. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Amin Aizat bin Ahmad, and I'm from the class of MMC 2423A. So right now I'm going to continue with our presentation, starting with the election on the 2015. So Myanmar held a general election on the November 8th of 2015. This general election was the first open elections since the 1990. At that moment, the National League for Democracy, which is the NLD, just won by gaining the majority of seats in both chambers of parliament. According to a researcher named Barker, he wrote it on his paper in 2015 saying that she cannot become the president because the constitution, which is the military constitution, would not allow anyone from anyone that have a foreign children or a foreign passport. Aung San Suu Kyi, however, became the de facto leader as a state councillor to effectively leading the government. However, the National League of Democracy, which is the NLD, it's been criticized as they failed to deal with widespread ethnic tension in Myanmar. Moving on to the next one, more parties would emerge and compete in the 2020 general election as the democracy government led by Aung San Suu Kyi failed in many aspects. 2020 election and security conflict. So as we all know, Myanmar's general election was on the 8th of November. So in the third in 10 years since the transition from military rule may be seen as another milestone in the country's fight for independence and democracy but unfortunately it is not. Hence, in the lead up of to 2020, the election-related conflict not only should be understood more generally to include physical violence, intimidations, and destruction of property that is related to campaigns or voting, but also should be conceptualized within the border environment in which vertical armed anti-state violence as well as horizontal violence among communities and interest groups are likely. On the 12th October, 404 villages, tracts in Bago region and Kachi and also Kayin and Shan State, as well as 5 townships in Shan State, were postponed due to the areas were under the effective control of the Wa and Kokang AEOs, rather than experiencing active conflict. Furthermore, on the 27th of October, a second announcement was made that the election would be postponed again in all wards and village tracts of 2 townships in Shan State, which is Kithi and Mongshu, okay, because of the ongoing armed conflict between the Tatmadaw and the Shan State Army North. So they kind of have various of conflict within with the army. So this is the reason or the conflict that Myanmar is struggling with their 2020 election. So to conclude it all, Myanmar's political system needs to be modified in order to give meaningful autonomy to sub-nation units no dependent on race, rather than to favor certain ethnic group or relation, with larger or more geographically clustered populations. And this would help to will help or to will the zero-sum dynamic within minority groups. With that, thank you so much for lending us your time to hear our presentation.